What's up, Hoopers? Ashley Nicole Moss here, and this is Triple Threat. We are officially 8 days away from the NBA trade deadline. We have our eyes on everything and anything going on in the NBA world right now. It's actually my favorite time of year because this is when the rumors start circulating and heads start spinning, mouths start watering, and everybody is going to have their eyes, like they didn't already, on Jimmy Butler. Where will he end up? But while we wait for that to unfold, we do have something else that we need to discuss because we do know this much, and that is that NBA fans need to learn how to keep their hands to themselves. If you missed it in the NBA world this past month, there was not one, but two instances where LeBron James was touched. Yes, you heard that correctly, was touched by a NBA fan randomly. Here's the video that went viral on the internet. You see LeBron, he's getting ready to do his thing. He's getting in the psyche that athletes get into, and a random hand just reaches across and touches him. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I know at a very young age, my parents, specifically my mom, taught me to keep my hands to myself. And that included to people that I was friendly with, that included to people that I was actually friends with, and it certainly included strangers. I want to know, who raised you people? Why do you think it's okay to randomly touch people just because you're in close proximity to them? It's absolutely mind-blowing to sit that close to LeBron James, or any player for that matter, and just say, you know what? Seeing LeBron in person, being courtside, having my feet touch the sacred wood of the Crypto One Staples Center. I'm going to always call it the Staples Center, actually. That's a different conversation for a different day. That's not enough for me to even breathe LeBron's air as a true LeBron fan. I need to reach over and touch him. See, LeBron is better than me. He has more self-control than me, because the way that I would have handled that situation, one thing about me, folks, I don't like being touched by random people. My mom can attest to this. Maybe I have to dive into some therapy. Maybe there's some deep-rooted issues here. I don't like being touched by random people. I don't like people I don't know in my personal space. I've gotten better with people that I do know being in my personal space. Again, something I may have to work out in therapy. But if a stranger were to touch me, absolutely not. Quick story, actually. I was at the airport a few years ago, and I'm standing online waiting to board the plane, and my hair was big and curly, kind of how it is right now, and this random lady touched my hair and said, "Your curls are beautiful." The way my head spun around so quickly, I said, "Excuse me, thank you, don't touch me. Just keep your hands to yourselves. A ticket does not give you free range to do whatever you want." That is the end of my rant. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And speaking of rants, Austin Rivers, I like to think that I can be a little petty. Maybe it's a character flaw, but I own it. You can call me Petty LaBelle. You can call me LaPetty. You can call me Petty LePew. I don't know. Whatever you want to put into that category. I can be pretty petty. I can hold a grudge. But I can tell you one thing. There is nothing I like more than free. If it's free, it's for me. But this is where Austin Rivers and I differ, because he had this to say about a free vacation from a certain family member and why he didn't go. Listen.
We had a huge family trip in Fiji.
Yeah.
There's all the Currys and all the Rivers. I didn't go.
Really?
We had just lost to the Warriors. I'm like, Steph, you're not about to fly me out on vacation after just knocking me out of the playoffs, bro. Like, there's no way I couldn't do it. No, I know. Trust me, my family, my fans are like, well, let's just all go. The whole family's going. I was like, I can't as a man. Have this man, he paid for the whole thing. Flights, island, rented out.
You couldn't go and just drink out of the coconut?
Nah, bro. This dude just had like 40 on my head top. There's no way I was getting on a flight and just be like, hey, Steph. Hell no. I DM'd him, I want to catch the next one. He's like, all right, man.
Yeah, I would have buckled my seatbelt and been like, let's go.
If the roles were reversed, it would have been the same thing.
Yeah.
I promise you, if we would have beat them and I was playing the way he was playing, and I did a family trip for all of us, that would be like, I got some business things. You would have no way would have came. We had a huge family trip in Fiji.
Austin Rivers is drastically better than me, because the way, let's pretend that this is a coconut or a tropical drink of your choice, pina colada, strawberry daiquiri. You do whatever you want to do in this scenario. The way I would have been on the beach like this, enjoying my free vacation to a private island in Fiji, just chilling. Yes, I maybe would have had some internal animosity towards Steph Curry, but you know what? I am running that tab all the way up, because if you push me out of the playoffs, if I am not playing basketball at this stage, or I didn't go far in the playoffs because you knocked me out, I'm running the tab up, I'm running the gas bill up, I'm running the electricity up, I'm running up whatever I can run up. Clearly you can afford it, and I believe in retribution. I'm getting my lick back. I'm leaving here with something, in the words of Denzel Washington. I will never be that proud to turn down anything FREE, and I certainly would never be too proud to turn down a free vacation on a private rented out island in Fiji. Austin Rivers, are you crazy? Sometimes you gotta know when to put your pride aside, and you always gotta put your pride aside for something that is as beautiful and amazing as a vacation that you don't have to pay for. Just free game, just take it or leave it. But if you need someone to go in your place next time, we should exchange information, because I would gladly have hung out with the Currys and the Rivers and got my tan on, my drink on, and been mad somewhere else, someplace else. Don't ever be that proud. We'll be back in just a few minutes. We have a jam-packed show. As I mentioned, 8 days away from the NBA trade deadline, and Jimmy Butler is the gift that keeps on giving. It's actually extremely toxic. I'm talking reality TV, Cardi B and Offset levels toxic. We will dive into everything with Coach Avery Johnson and Brad Botkin right after this. Welcome back to Triple Threat, and I am now joined by Brad Botkin and Coach Avery Johnson, who's handling very important business. That's the only reason he's ever on his phone. Fellas, thank you so much for joining me. And before the break, I teased the saga that is known as Jimmy Butler. In case you have not been following things, I don't know how you would have missed it. I will catch you up to speed in what has happened in the last few days. So the Heat have officially suspended Jimmy Butler indefinitely. As we know, there was a report that he walked out of a shoot-around after finding out that he lost his starting spot to Haywood Highsmith. And all HE double hockey sticks broke out on social media after that. Kevin Love had a very hilarious post. If you've ever seen Training Day, we can't play that on network, but there was a very classic scene where Denzel Washington is yelling at his friends in the hood who basically failed him miserably. And he said, Jimmy immediately hearing he wasn't in the starting lineup. Haywood Highsmith over me, which is a call to Tobias Harris over me. You have Jimmy Butler then being the troll that he is and posted a few memes from Martin. Now, if you aren't unfamiliar, Tommy did not have a job on Martin. And now Jimmy Butler is saying, I too don't have a job. Now, this happened just a few days after Jimmy got into an altercation at a paddle club in Miami during his second suspension, which was for missing a team flight allegedly. And here he is. We can't really hear what is being said, but he is having a very heated exchange with somebody. And then the day after this altercation, he spoke to the Miami media, the local media, and he had this to say.
The absolute most. I love this city with everything that I have. I'm so glad that I get to be around so many incredible people, friends and family that are here. This city deserves everything. It deserves everything that matters.
So if you weren't able to hear that clearly, he basically ended it and said, I love the city of Miami with all my heart. This is a very toxic relationship. Coach, I'm going to start with you. We're now looking at 3 suspensions. It was first 7 days, then it was 2 days. Now it's indefinitely. As a former player, as a former coach, it takes a lot to suspend a player back to back to back. Now, there are multiple sides to this story. Obviously, we only know what's in front of us. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes. But where do you fall in the blame game here? Is it leaning more towards the player or the organization?
First of all, I would just say stop the madness. We need to get this resolved like yesterday. One, I think the NBA fans in general, they're exhausted with this whole story, with this entire narrative. So I think it's up to Pat Riley and to find Jimmy Butler, a new home so that they can move forward. I can't see Jimmy Butler in a Miami Heat uniform past the trade deadline. This storyline and this relationship, I think it has been severed, and I don't see any turning back. Early on, I was on Jimmy's side in terms of, hey, I needed a contract extension. I'm still going to practice hard, play hard, be on time for every film session, practice, airplane. But when it shifted to conduct detrimental to the team, then I'm leaning a little bit more towards management side, because if we're going to work together for a mutually agreeable solution, then let's make sure that I attend all of the meetings, make sure I'm ready to play, but I still want you to find me a new home. I do want an extension, which is going to probably come with another team. So right now I'm leaning towards management side because I think his conduct right now is detrimental to the team.
Brad, Victor Oladipo sat in that very seat, and I asked him a similar question. And I said, when you look at the situation, do you lean more towards one side or the other? And he said, look, if you've been following Jimmy Butler's career, this is how Jimmy handles things when he's out, which as a Jimmy Butler fan, he's turned his narrative around completely when he got to Miami. I feel like that whole ideology of him not being a teammate, being a locker room cancer, being bad for a winning culture. When he got to Miami, he erased all of that. And I feel like this situation, although he has a right to be frustrated, it's kind of backtracking to that narrative. Like, where do you sit in this?
Does he have a right to be frustrated?
I mean, he did give his all to an organization and help them multiple conference finals appearances, finals, and wanted the extension. Now, I don't necessarily agree with how he's going about this, but does he have a right to be frustrated? I think that's human nature.
Yeah, I mean, I think you sometimes just have to check yourself. I mean, yeah, he's been great for the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat have been great for him, too. You know, he was the best player. He was the catalyst, the guy that takes them to 2 finals. They rise up from the 8th seed, a team that's not supposed to make it. He goes into playoff mode. And he's paid handsomely for that. So
$50 million.
I tend to err on the side of, if you're under contract and you have to force your way out, basically by turning into a child, by saying, I'm not going to do what you're paying me $48 million to do this year. I'm not going to be there for practices in spirit. I'm going to say that I'm playing hard in games, but if you watch early on before his suspension, he's throwing up one-leggers from the corner. He's standing still, and then after the game trying to make Eric Spoelstra the culprit, that they're taking him out of the point of the offense and turning it over to Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo. That's not true. Jimmy Butler's the best player on the team. Eric Spoelstra's one of the best coaches ever. He's not just going to stick Jimmy Butler in the corner. So I don't agree that while he was trying to paint the narrative that he was showing up and doing his job and he just wants his extension, I don't think he actually was. And the simple truth is we live in the second apron era now in the NBA. He's old. He's not going to be Jimmy Butler. If he still is right now, he's not going to be for another 3 or 4 years. So we just saw that it happened with Paul George and the Clippers. You can't blame management for not giving a max contract to a guy that's going to be 37, 38 years old on the end of a deal. They have to have some foresight. I don't think they did anything wrong. They paid Jimmy while he was there very well. And now because he's not getting the extension that he wants into the future, he's being paid right now. He just says, I want to be out of here. Now, that's the way that it tends to work with star players, but I very rarely err on the side of saying that they're justified in doing that.
I mean, Coach, looking at the scenario, we're going to dissect some of the biggest NBA beefs that we compiled a list of in just a second. But if you are the head coach or in the front office of the Houston Rockets or the Warriors or the Lakers or any of the teams that have laid some breadcrumbs that they possibly be interested in Jimmy Butler, do you remember playoff Jimmy and the times that he's put this Miami Heat team on his back, or are you a victim of the moment and remembering this Jimmy and how he's acting to get out of that situation?
If I'm a team like the Phoenix Suns, the Memphis Grizzlies, even the Philadelphia 76ers with Joel Embiid healthy. I'm remembering playoff Jimmy, but I'm also communicating with Jimmy's agent and his representatives that his future, what the franchise that he's getting traded to, is going to be dependent on, how we finish as a team, and not just his behavior on and off the court, but how we finish as a team. Does he help us get to the next level? I can only imagine Jimmy with a team, because Bradley Beal is in a situation where he's basically unwanted right now in Phoenix, and his wife is getting into, confrontations with fans because fans are really, belittling Jimmy Beal and the way he's playing on the court, and that's always a bad situation. We saw that at St. Louis yesterday, University of St. Louis, when they played a game last night with fans and getting on one of the players' moms from VCU. So that's always a bad situation. But I'm remembering playoff Jimmy. If I'm the Phoenix Suns, can you help elevate us from the play-in to maybe the Western Conference Finals with a chance to win an NBA championship? If I'm the Memphis Grizzlies, I'm thinking about playoff Jimmy. But after this year, there's no guarantee on an extension. It's going to be, show me what you can do now and during the playoffs, and that's going to determine your future with our franchise.
All right. Well, this is obviously a very toxic relationship, and it made us to start thinking about other toxic relationships in the history of the NBA. So we're going to break down some of our favorite NBA beefs of all time. So we have a graphic that is going to help us dissect that. Obviously, we have Michael Jordan versus Isaiah Thomas. We remember Isaiah Thomas famously saying, "I fit the criteria. I don't know why I didn't make the cut." Reggie Miller and Spike Lee, that beef is very much still alive and well. It is a beef that was passed down to the generations of Knicks fans, including myself. Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, they ended up squashing that beef, luckily, before Kobe's untimely death. Matt Barnes and Derek Fisher.
That's the good one.
That we know. Derek Fisher ended up marrying Matt Barnes' ex-wife, and we all remember him doing 100 on the highway to get to Derek Fisher, allegedly to throw some hands. And Alonzo Mourning's foot versus Jeff Van Gundy during the infamous brawl between the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks. Guys, what are some of your favorite NBA beefs? I'll start with you.
Those were good. I mean, I don't want to keep it too much on Jimmy, but Jimmy, the way he blew out of Minnesota was, I mean, look, when he took the red shirt squad and went head to head with Towns and Wiggins and the quote starters and regulars, and he's telling the owner, "You need me," and he's busting the best players. That was
and allegedly flirting with his teammates' girlfriends behind their back. And
I don't know about all that, but just in a pure basketball sense, to pick up the walk-ons and take out that is statement time. But our producer was emailing me about this and said, let's dig in a little bit maybe to the basketball side. And I got a couple here that aren't quite as funny, but Draymond versus Draymond has been a really interesting beef to me because we've talked about it ad nauseum, but the things that make Draymond great are the things that make him terrible for a team too. He maybe cost him a championship in 2016. He's putting Rudy Gobert in a chokehold. He's backhanding Yusuf Nurkic. He's knocking out his own teammate, but then he's also obviously an integral part of a dynasty. Him having to walk that fine line and fight with himself, sort of his better angels and his devil, and which one's going to come out on a nightly basis.
Shoulder, right.
That's always been fun for me to watch. I would throw Kyrie versus Science was an interesting one. And one more, as a Warriors fan, and I'd be interested to get Coach's take on this. Steve Kerr versus the pick and roll has been really difficult for me to grapple with over the years. You've got clearly the best pick and roll player in history, and yet everyone will tell you what makes Steph Curry so hard to guard is his off-ball movement and all that randomized structure in the Golden State system. But it's been really interesting to me to watch Steve Kerr battle with all the critics, because they do get loud sometimes of, I'm not going to turn the best pick and roll player loose. We're going to be at the bottom of the league in pick and rolls. Him kind of beefing with that has always been, from a basketball standpoint, has been interesting to me.
Coach, you've been part of the game a long time. What are some of yours?
I'm going to take you guys back to 1995 and the beef between Dennis Rodman and Greg Popovich, which ended up costing us a championship because that beef was so intense behind the scenes because Dennis didn't want to cooperate. Bob Hill was the coach. Popovich was the general manager. He fined Dennis over and over again for being late to practice, missing practice. And we were 2-2 with the Houston Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. We were 2-2. We were 0-2 at home. We went to Houston and won 2 games, came back home. Dennis purposely missed practice. And, he and Coach Popovich got into it. And we didn't start Dennis in Game 5, which subsequently gave Houston the momentum back. We were 62-20 that year. We beat Houston 5 out of 6 times. And we were the favorites in front of 40,000 fans at home. And we lost that series. And Houston went on to beat the Orlando Magic in the NBA Finals. But that beef led Dennis to getting traded for Will Perdue. And Dennis went on to win 3 championships with the Chicago Bulls. And, we won eventually in 99, which led to 5 more championships. But that was a serious beef that I witnessed between 2 Hall of Famers.
I absolutely love a good NBA beef. I love a good rap beef, and I love a good NBA debate. And I'm glad Brad mentioned the Warriors because when we come back, we are going to debate, is Andre Iguodala a Hall of Famer? You are looking at a list of Andre Iguodala's Hall of Fame case, or his resume, his accolades, whatever you want to call it. 19 seasons with the NBA, a 2015 NBA Finals MVP, 4-time NBA champion, 2015, 17, 18, 22. And the question still remains, as we now know, the Warriors will be officially retiring his jersey. He will be the 7th Warrior number to ever be retired. Other organizations, including the Lakers, have 13 numbers retired. The Celtics have 23 numbers retired. Only 2 of those players are in the Hall of Fame. But the question has always remained about Andre Iguodala. And Brad, I'm going to start with you as our Warriors fan here. Is Iggy a Hall of Fame candidate? Right now, Basketball Reference, I want to make sure I get this number right, has him at a 12, almost 13% chance of making it based on achievements and awards, which is crazy. When we showed you that list of accolades and accomplishments, only a 13% chance to make it into the Hall of Fame.
Well, it makes sense. He's, I think, a one-time All-Star, right? If I was reading the graphic right, and I think that's right. Was never, when he was supposed to be the best player and the franchise player, he never really quite lived up to that in Philadelphia. That was never really his game. He was never really a give him the ball and let him dominate a game as a scorer. So he really found his niche when he went to Denver, and he became part of that sum of the parts attack. And then certainly when he went to Golden State, he's a really, really unique case, because I actually agree that on individual accolades, it probably would fall short if you measure him up against the standard of current Hall of Famers.
Well, speaking of those individual accolades, can we throw up his individual stats while Brad kind of talks us through this a little bit? Because it is an interesting case, because his resume as a whole is impressive, but here he is as an individual.
Yeah, I mean, look, 16 points. You see it there. He's a box score stuffer. He does everything, but he doesn't do any one thing other than defend at a super elite Hall of Fame level. I just think the impact that he had on the Golden State Warriors, and if you go back to why the Warriors became the Warriors, of course, drafting Stephen Curry was huge, and Klay Thompson, Draymond Green in the second round. But that trade that they made to get Andre Iguodala, they were able to get off the salaries of Brandon Rush, Andres Biedrins, and Richard Jefferson. They traded 4 draft picks. Those were contracts that were supposed to not be tradable. They got off those contracts, and it freed up the money for them to go out and sign Andre Iguodala, who they had just beaten the previous year in the playoffs with Denver. That was such a huge trade for what he did for them, for that death lineup, for him controlling the point and facilitating to Steph. Obviously, defensively, he was a monster part of a dynasty. That was a massive trade in building that dynasty. And I think for the impact that he had beyond his individual numbers, I think that he deserves to make the Hall of Fame.
Coach, it's very interesting, right? Because when you look at some individual players, and I'll go back to what I opened with here, one player not in the Hall of Fame other than Iggy for all the Warriors who've had their jerseys retired. Two players are only in the Hall of Fame for all the players that the Celtics have jersey retires. But the Lakers have a very high threshold when it comes to retiring jerseys. They're all Hall of Famers. So for Iggy's case, yes, the individual accolades, you can probably make an argument like, not a Hall of Fame type of career, but doesn't that all go out the window once you have not one, but multiple world championships and a finals MVP? Does it even matter what you look like as an individual player?
It matters, but the championships and his impact on winning far exceeds, in my mind, his individual statistics. You know, and what message are we sending the young people that are currently playing AAU and coming up through college basketball? It's about winning, his impact on winning. When you look at those championships, okay, maybe one of those championships, he didn't have the type of impact. But hey, if Iggy didn't perform at the level that he performed on the offensive and defensive end, maybe the Warriors don't win 2 of those 4 if he wasn't on those teams performing at the level that he was performing. This guy was a shutdown defender. He scored in a major way when the Warriors needed him to score, when Steph is getting double teamed and Clay's being denied the ball, and maybe he's at the 4 position, he's at the 3 position, he's playing small 5, he's playing big 2. He was versatile in so many ways.
Right.
I'm rewarding him for these championships. Not that he was the number one reason why they won those championships, but he was a major reason why. And the 16.5 points is not going to have as much impact as winning in my mind.
I mean, we now know that Derrick Rose will get his jersey retired with the Chicago Bulls next season. They have had a beautiful ceremony for him this season, though, where he had the flower shop and his, family was there and just gave Derrick Rose his much-deserved flowers for what he did for the Chicago Bulls organization. Made us start thinking, what other players do you think deserve a jersey in the rafters at some point? The interesting thing enough, you have players like LeBron who could have it in multiple arenas.
And I think he should. Yeah.
You think about Kevin Durant, who won 2 championships with the Warriors. Are they going to retire his jersey there? I mean, where do you stand on jersey retirements and hanging those in the rafters? Should there be a little bit of a stricter protocol in what that entails on how to get that?
I think it's based on the franchise. If you're a Laker, you're going to have to be super, super good. If you played for the Pacers, maybe a guy like Rick Smits could be considered because of, impact. It's just a lower threshold. I tend to, for me personally, and it might be kind of vague, but I tend to think that there are 2 ways that your jersey gets retired. Either you were an integral part of a championship team, whether you were the main person or not, like an Andre Iguodala, like Coach Avery Johnson has his number retired with San Antonio, was never the best player on the team, but an integral kind of core player, and you have that impact. That can get you. Or you were just an awesome player. You were like a Joel Embiid in Philadelphia, somebody who never won a championship. These are your Russell Westbrooks in OKC, your Damian Lillards in Portland, you're probably James Harden in Houston. Never won the championship, but were so good individually that you get it retired that way. A really interesting case for me right now is Jamal Murray, because he's never been an all-star, but he was the second best player on a championship team, a franchise that had never won a championship. He's a homegrown guy, a lot of things in his favor. I think a guy like that can get his jersey retired, maybe eventually Jalen Brunson with New York. Even if you don't end up being like an MVP player, you have that sort of impact on a team. I think those guys also deserve their jersey to be retired.
Coach, I'm going to get your answer after the break. But before we go into the break, fun fact for everybody, Cedric Maxwell, also known as Cornbread, the 1981 Celtics player, is the only player in NBA history to win a finals MVP but not make the Hall of Fame. His number 31, though, is retired. When we come back, we are going to compare the franchise eras of some big teams, and we're going to get Coach Avery Johnson's answer about who else deserves a jersey retirement. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Triple Threat. Ashley Nicole Moss here, along with Brad Botkin and Coach Avery Johnson. And Coach, I wanted to get your answer on a player who has yet to have their jersey retired, but deserves it.
Yeah, and with jersey retirements, as Brad, my jersey, not because I made an all-star team or because I could shoot three-pointers. It was for all of the reasons of leadership, first championship with the Spurs, hit the game-winning shot. There are a lot of players that deserve it because of the amount of points that they've scored. But I got one guy in mind. Two-time gold medal winner, two-time NBA champion, one with the Milwaukee Bucks and also the Boston Celtics. What about a guy like Drew Holiday?
Ooh.
You know, whether with the Celtics or Milwaukee, Drew Holiday deserves to have his jersey retired. Because if you think about that Milwaukee championship, no Drew Holiday, no ring. As good as the Celtics young players are, no Drew Holiday, no ring. This guy is phenomenal. He plays the right way. He's a winner, two-time gold medal winner. When you talk about our show, Triple Threat, pass, dribble, shoot, he can do it all. My vote is for Drew Holiday.
Well, if Drew Holiday needs someone to lead his campaign, we know the perfect guy to do it. And speaking of the Boston Celtics, the starting five of the Celtics just absolutely lethal. And I know right now it seems in some way, shapes, or form they may be kind of coasting a little bit. They're going to flip that switch after the All-Star break. And speaking of the All-Star break, we already know who our starters are going to be for the Eastern and Western conferences. But this Thursday, the reserves will also be announced. And that got us thinking about kind of comparing the eras in a little game we're going to call the franchise battle. And this is where we're going to take two versions of starting five lineups from different eras of the same franchise and see which team would beat the other in a series of 7 or maybe just a one and done. However you want to imagine it, we're going to compare eras right now. So we're going to start with the 2008 Boston Celtics versus the current Boston Celtics. So the 2008 Celtics was obviously with Rondo, Allen, Pierce, Garnett, Perkins. This is the team that won a championship versus another championship team, and that's the 2024 Celtics. Derek White, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Porzingis. Brad, who you leaning towards?
Oh my God! When I got this in my email last night, this is tough. Mm-hmm. This is really tough. To me, this is about top end depth versus overall depth. The current Celtics,
and remember the coaches.
The current
you had
Celtics,
Doc Rivers versus Joe Mazzulla. Yes.
Look, I don't think in the end, I don't think that anybody on this current Celtics team can measure up to Kevin Durant's defensive impact. And if a game was on the line, I would also take Paul Pierce over Jason Tatum. I think Paul Pierce is one of the all-time gamers. He was almost like we talked about Jimmy Butler earlier, a lot like Jimmy Butler, where his numbers over the course of the regular season is maybe not going to be like with the Kobe's and the top guys, but in a series, in a game, when it's all on the line, you'd be very hard-pressed to find anybody that you'd want the ball in the hands of more than a Paul Pierce. I think those guys were such dogs to beat the Kobe Lakers. I don't think this year's Celtics had to beat as good of a team. I think
that's fair.
That defense, they were unbelievable defensively. Not really even a top 10 offense, so that's maybe a knock. But they were so good defensively. They were such fighters. Rajon Rondo was so good.
So in a best of 7,
I would give the edge. And again,
close series.
The difficult thing, it would be close. The difficult thing is because not everyone's a threat on that older team. Kendrick Perkins is not a threat. Kristaps Porzingis is a huge threat. All 5 guys can beat you on the current team. But I would give the edge to the older guys because of Pierce at the end of a game and because of Garnett's defense.
Coach, I'm coming to you for this next one here. We're going to go to Oklahoma City, and we're going to have the 2012 Thunder versus this current construction of the exact same team. So if you need a reminder, that was the 2012 team that had Durant, Harden, Westbrook, Ibaka, and Kendrick Perkins making another appearance. Yeah. And that is versus this 2024 team with SGA, Lou Dort, Jalen Williams, my guy Hartenstein from the New York Knicks, and obviously Chet Holmgren. Who are you leaning towards?
Well, exactly. I would go up again center because he's the usual suspect. But I'm taking the 2012 Thunder. This is an easy one for me. With all due respect to the 2024 Thunder. Westbrook, Harden said, Durant, I know Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is terrific, but when you look at that team with Kevin Durant, they would beat that 2024 team easily 4-2. They wouldn't even go to 7 wins. Westbrook, unguardable. James Harden, scoring at the end of the shot clock. They would overwhelm that 2024 team. Sure, when you wake up in the morning, we'll give Shai Gilgeous-Alexander his 32 points, but no. Between Westbrook, Durant, and Harden, that's 90 points right there in their sleep.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously was one hell of a team for sure.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about that team? Go ahead, Coach.
Is what area you're playing in?
Yeah.
Because there's no freedom of movement with the rules. You know, it's more of a defensive league a little bit more back then.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about that team is 2016 Thunder, I think, were actually better than that team because they didn't have Harden, but Durant and Westbrook were young on that team. So was So was Serge Ibaka.
Prime Serge Ibaka.
They hit their prime in 2016 when they lost in 7 in the conference finals.
Yeah.
That team would be an interesting debate, too, even though they never made it to the finals.
And you know that 2016 well because what happened after that, Kevin Durant became a Golden State Warrior and went on to win 2 NBA championships. Now, the 2016 Cavs, one of my favorite teams of all time, being a diehard Kyrie Irving fan, we're going to put them against the current roster of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I feel like when you have LeBron on a team, it's an easy answer, but we're going to just do it for the fun of it. Obviously, the 2016 Cavs included my guy Kyrie Irving, J.R. Smith, LeBron James, Kevin Love, and Tristan Thompson. Both K-Love and Tristan Thompson, I think fair to say, were in their prime, this 2016 Cavs team. And we're not going to knock them because right now they're sitting at number 1 in the Eastern Conference, and they have been hitting a little bit of a slump right now, but they were absolutely killing it on all cylinders very early in the season, and maybe Kenny Atkinson's the piece that they've been looking for. But the 2024 Cavs obviously include Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. Who are you leaning towards? So I feel like when you have LeBron, it's not even a fair competition. But like, come on,
this one. I know. Coach said the last one was easy for him. This is a blowout. And in all due respect to the Cavs this year, I don't even think they're going to get out of the Eastern Conference. But you look at LeBron James in his absolute prime.
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving in his absolute prime.
Remember the shot that sent that? Come on.
Look, I would argue that Kevin Love, although he sacrificed and played a much different role on that team, when you think about Minnesota Kevin Love, which is the stage of his career that he was in, I would argue that Kevin Love is better than any player on the Cavaliers right now. The third best player on that team, in my mind, would be the best player on this current Cavs team. So I think they have a little more depth, maybe a little bit more height. But there's just no way. I mean, you come back from 3-1 to beat the Warriors. To have 2 options like LeBron and Kyrie, that team was so good. If any team was going to be able to take out the 73-win Warriors, and there's very few in history, that was one of them. This one is a boat race.
It's super interesting, too, because when you look at these 3 teams that we've dissected from different eras, I feel like the Celtics, yes, we can make some argument about specific players and where they are in tiers, but I feel like the Celtics did the best job at kind of mirroring the same success or the same roster, the same starting 5 that they had in 08. Would you say out of all of them, this is the most mirror image of that 08 championship team?
Well, they have definitely embraced the defensive side. They're the defensive identity of both the 08 team and the 24 team that won the title and this year's team. And I think you have a lot of similar players. You know, Coach mentioned Drew Holiday earlier and having his number retired. A guy like Rajon Rondo and Drew Holiday are really similar, even Derek White, in terms of they're not going to get 25, 30 a game.
Right.
But they defend, they pass, they do everything on the court. Just winners, I think, Rondo and White and Holiday, And then you had the stars in Pierce and Tatum. Yeah, a lot of similarities.
Coach, welcome back, and I want to give you the last word here. The Cavs. I feel like easy answer. When you have LeBron, it's always the better team. But if you had to pick the 2016 Cavs over the Cavs now, who are you leaning towards?
Oh, definitely the 2016 Cavs. No brainer. 4-1. 4-1. LeBron.
Wow, gentleman sweep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, J.R. Smith. Again, this Cavs teams this year, I'm not completely sold on. I'm still all in on the Celtics. I think there's not enough three-point shooting at the 4 and 5 spot to really spread the floor. But when you're marching out LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, they'll beat this team 4-1.
Wow, gentlemen sweep, and coach is not sold on the Cavs as a team to go the distance. Cleveland will definitely be in your DMs, Avery Johnson. I hope you are prepared. I want to thank Brad and Avery for joining today on Triple Threat, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Triple Threat. It is that time in the show where we like to get in our bag and reach into some of the fan questions or fan answers to a question that I pose on my social media, and you never know when it's going to pop up. And this week's question was all about Kobe Bean Bryant. It was the 5-year anniversary of his very untimely death. So I asked my social media, what is your favorite Kobe Bean Bryant memory? Now, I've always said this and I'll continue to say it. Allen Iverson and Kobe Bryant were the reason I fell in love with the game of basketball. My dad taught me the game, but Kobe and AI were the players I followed the most. Then came Melo and some other guys, but I credit my love of the game and wanting to learn more about it with Kobe Bryant. And I thought this was the perfect opportunity to honor his legacy and get some of your favorite memories. So let's dig into our bag and see what we can pull out here. So the first one, answering questions from reporters in their native language during a World Cup promotion tour. Absolutely. One of my favorite things about Kobe was he was so fluent in just all of the different cultures in the world, and so many different cultures loved him. Obviously, being half Italian myself, I love the fact that he spoke Italian so fluently, and we all know why. He spent some time there, but he was also very good in Spanish. I don't know if you remember the video of him speaking to Luka in his native tongue. Kobe Bryant was just different. They don't build him like him anymore. Let's dig into another one. What do we got here? Won his 5th championship against the Celtics in Game 7. Whenever the Celtics lose, it's a good day. I'm not mad at this one either. Obviously, would have loved to see him get a couple more rings, but 5 of them things, incredible. Let's see what else we can pull out here. Definitely him pulling up to the Rucker fresh off a finals win. One of my favorite memories. I am sick I could not see this in person. As a native New Yorker, the Rucker Park, Dyckman, West 4th, all the parks, I have so many fond memories of every single one of them. I was actually able to do a feature at Rucker Park before it changed. I can only imagine the chaos, and in the best way possible, of what that game looked like when he hopped out of that car and rolled into Rucker with the swag that only Kobe Bryant had, the silent assassin, if you will, and just gave out buckets. It is one of the things I wish I could have been part of, and I'm absolutely really sad that I couldn't have been there. I was a little young, but my dad could have brought me if he really tried. Dad, I blame you for this. Listen, thank you guys so much for joining this episode of Triple Threat. If you missed any part of the show, don't worry. With myself, Brad Botkin, Coach Avery Johnson, we will have the full episode up on YouTube, and you can scan this QR code to make it easier for you to watch wherever you may be.